Marcus Thompson stood at the large window of his corner office on the 35th floor, looking down at the busy streets of Atlanta. His reflection showed a tall, well-dressed man in his early 40s wearing an expensive suit. But today, even his favorite suit couldn't lift his mood. Something was wrong with his company, and he could feel it in his bones. On his desk sat a thick report with the latest employee satisfaction survey results. The numbers were not good. For the third time in a row, employee happiness had gone down. This bothered Marcus deeply because when he started Thompson Digital Solutions 15 years ago, he had promised himself he would create a place where people loved to work. The morning sun warmed his face as he remembered those early days. He had started the company in his garage with just 3 employees. Now, they had over 500 people working for them, and their software products were used by companies all over the world. They were making more money than ever before. But money wasn't everything. Marcus walked back to his desk and picked up his phone. He needed advice, and there was only one person he trusted completely for that: his old mentor, Dr. James Wilson. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar warm voice answered. "Marcus, my boy, how are you doing?" Dr. Wilson's voice brought an immediate smile to Marcus's face. "I've been better, Doc," Marcus replied, settling into his leather chair. "Something's not right at the company, and I can't put my finger on it." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus explained everything to Dr. Wilson: the dropping satisfaction scores, the increasing number of people leaving the company, and the feeling that there was a big gap between the management and regular employees. "You know," Dr. Wilson said thoughtfully, "when I was a professor, I learned the most about my classroom not from my desk at the front, but when I sat with the students and saw things from their point of view." That simple comment hit Marcus like a lightning bolt. He sat up straighter in his chair, his mind racing with possibilities. "Doc, you just gave me an idea," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "What if I could see my company through the eyes of a regular employee?" After hanging up, Marcus couldn't sit still. He paced his office, working out the details in his head. The company was big enough now that many employees didn't know what he looked like. Some had never met him in person. With the right changes to his appearance, he could work among them without anyone knowing who he really was. But where should he work? Marcus stopped at his window again, watching people enter and exit the building below. That's when he saw Lisa, one of their receptionists, greeting people at the front desk. The reception desk, it was perfect. Receptionists saw everything and talked to everyone, from delivery people to top executives. Marcus sat down at his computer and opened a new document. He needed a plan. First, he would need a new identity. He decided on the name Jerome Williams, simple and forgettable. Next, he needed help with his appearance. His sister Tanya was a professional makeup artist who worked in movies. She could help him look different enough that his own employees wouldn't recognize him. He would tell only 3 people about his plan: his sister Tanya, his personal assistant Rachel, who managed his schedule, and the head of HR, but only because they needed a way to hire Jerome without raising suspicion. As Marcus worked on his plan, he felt more excited than he had in years. This wasn't just about finding problems. It was about truly understanding what it was like to work at his company when you weren't the boss. Looking at his reflection one last time, Marcus made a promise to himself. No matter what he discovered, he would use this experience to make real changes. His employees deserved nothing less. Tomorrow, he would call Tanya and set everything in motion. But for now, he had one more thing to do. Marcus picked up his phone and sent a message to his assistant. "Rachel, please clear my schedule for the next 4 weeks. Something important has come up." Then he smiled, knowing that in a few weeks, Marcus Thompson, the CEO, would disappear, and Jerome Williams, the new receptionist, would arrive. The greatest undercover mission of his life was about to begin. Marcus sat nervously in his sister Tanya's home studio, surrounded by makeup brushes, wigs, and various cosmetic tools. It was early Sunday morning, and they had the whole day to perfect his new look. Tanya circled him like an artist studying a blank canvas, her professional makeup kit open on the table beside them. "Are you sure about this, big brother?" Tanya asked, running her fingers through his neatly trimmed hair. "Once I'm done, your own mother might walk past you without recognizing you." Marcus nodded firmly. "That's exactly what I need, Tanya. I have to look completely different from the CEO, everyone knows." Tanya got to work. First, She applied special makeup to make his skin tone appear slightly different and added subtle lines around his eyes and mouth to age him by a few years. She used temporary hair color to add gray streaks to his hair and applied a special product to make it look less groomed. The key to this disguise isn't just about changing how you look, Tanya explained as she worked. It's about changing how people see you. Right now, you carry yourself like a CEO. We need to change that. For the next hour, she taught Marcus how to adjust his posture. No more standing straight with shoulders back. Instead, he learned to slouch slightly, to make himself appear smaller. They practiced until his confident stride became a more modest walk. Now for the clothes, Tanya said, opening a shopping bag. She had bought everything from a local department store. Nothing fancy, nothing branded. There were simple button-down shirts, basic khaki pants, and comfortable but worn-looking shoes. Marcus changed into his new outfit and looked in the mirror. The man staring back at him was someone entirely different. Gone was the powerful CEO in designer suits. In his place stood Jerome Williams, the temporary worker looking for a fresh start. But the physical transformation was only the beginning. Marcus spent the next few hours practicing his new identity with Tanya. They created a whole life story for Jerome. He had worked various office jobs, was between permanent positions, and lived in a modest apartment across town. They practiced different scenarios until Jerome's background story felt natural. Remember, Tanya said, Jerome can't know things that a regular person wouldn't know. You need to forget about being a CEO. The final test came when Rachel, Marcus's assistant, arrived at Tanya's house. She had worked with Marcus for 5 years and knew him better than most people. When she walked in, Marcus was sitting in the living room, pretending to fill out job application forms. Rachel looked right at him and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have the wrong house. I'm looking for Marcus and Tanya." Marcus spoke in Jerome's slightly higher, less confident voice. "They're in the kitchen, ma'am. Would you like me to get them for you?" Rachel's jaw dropped when she realized who she was talking to. Marcus. "Oh my God, I didn't recognize you at all." Everyone in the room broke into excited laughter. The disguise was perfect. That evening, Marcus practiced being Jerome in public. He went to a local coffee shop where he often bought his morning coffee. The barista who served him nearly every day didn't give him a second glance. At the grocery store, he ran into one of his company's board members who walked right past him. Back at home, Marcus laid out Jerome's clothes for the next day. He had already arranged everything through HR. Jerome Williams would start work tomorrow as a temporary receptionist, covering for someone on leave. His resume showed basic office experience, nothing outstanding, nothing that would draw attention. As he set his alarm clock, Marcus felt butterflies in his stomach. Tomorrow, he would walk into his own building as a different person. He would sit at the front desk of the company he built, and nobody would know who he really was. Before going to bed, he looked one last time in the mirror. Jerome Williams looked back at him, an ordinary man with a slightly tired face, gray-streaked hair, and humble clothes. The disguise was perfect, but Marcus wondered if he could really pull this off. Tomorrow would be the real test. As he turned off the lights, Marcus whispered to himself, "Goodbye, Marcus Thompson. Hello, Jerome Williams." The greatest acting role of his life was about to begin, and he couldn't help but wonder what he would discover about his company, and himself, in the days to come. Jerome's first Monday morning at the reception desk started at 7:30 a.m. Marcus, now fully disguised as Jerome, arrived early, feeling strange as he walked through his own building's front door. Earl, the security guard who had worked there for 8 years, gave him a friendly nod but didn't recognize him at all. "You must be the new temp," Earl said warmly. "I'm Earl. Welcome to Thompson Digital." Marcus smiled, remembering how he had personally hired Earl years ago. "Thanks, I'm Jerome. Nice to meet you." Lisa, the senior receptionist, spent 30 minutes showing Jerome the basics: how to transfer calls, where to direct visitors, and which employees liked their deliveries held at the desk. As she explained things, Marcus noticed how many extra tasks receptionists handled that weren't in any job description. By 9 a.m., the lobby was busy with people rushing to meetings. Marcus watched as managers he knew well walked past without even glancing at the reception desk. Some dropped off visitors without introducing them, leaving Jerome to figure out who they were and where they needed to go. Around 10 a.m., something happened that opened Marcus's eyes. Sarah Chen, a young programmer he remembered hiring last year, approached the desk looking upset. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I have an appointment with Mr. Cooper in operations about my promotion request." Marcus checked the schedule and found her name. Just then, James Cooper, his VP of operations, walked through the lobby talking loudly on his phone. Sarah tried to catch his attention, but Cooper walked straight past her and into the elevator. "I'm sorry," Sarah said to Jerome, "but this is the third time he's missed our meeting. HR said I need to discuss my promotion with him directly, but I can't even get 5 minutes." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The company's open-door policy was something he had always been proud of. Now he was seeing how it really worked, or didn't work, for regular employees. During lunch break, Earl joined Jerome at his desk with an extra sandwich. "Thought you might be hungry," he said. "First days can be tough." As they ate, Earl shared stories about the building and its people. Marcus learned that the cleaning staff had their breaks cut short because some managers complained about seeing them in the lobby. He discovered that maintenance requests from lower floors often took weeks to address, while executive floor issues were fixed immediately. The afternoon brought more revelations. A group of well-dressed clients walked in, and Marcus recognized them as potential investors. When he called up to announce them, he was shocked to hear how differently they spoke to Jerome compared to how they had spoken to him as CEO just last week. "Listen carefully now," one of them said slowly, as if speaking to a child. "We have a very important meeting with Mr. Thompson. Don't mess up our names when you announce us." Marcus forced himself to smile and nod, feeling both angry and ashamed. Had visitors always treated his reception staff this way? By the end of the day, Marcus had filled 3 pages in a small notebook he kept in his pocket. He wrote down everything he saw: how junior employees were afraid to speak up in the lobby, how middle managers ignored their team members outside of meetings, and how differently people were treated based on their position or appearance. As he was preparing to leave, a young black intern walked through the lobby wearing a suit. 3 different people stopped him to ask if he was with the cleaning crew. Marcus watched the intern politely explain each time that he worked in finance, his face showing a tired resignation that suggested this happened often. Earl appeared beside Jerome's desk as the lobby quieted down. "Rough first day?" he asked kindly. Marcus shook his head slowly. "Eye-opening," he replied truthfully. "Well," Earl said, patting Jerome's shoulder, "at least you made it through. Some temps don't last a day here. You seem different though, like you actually care about doing this job right." On his drive home, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about everything he'd seen. The company he thought he knew so well looked completely different from behind the reception desk, and this was only day 1. He pulled into his driveway, still dressed as Jerome, and sat in his car for a long moment. The notebook in his pocket felt heavy with the weight of all he had learned. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, he was sure. But for now, he had some serious thinking to do about the gap between what he believed his company was and what it actually had become. It was Wednesday, Jerome's 3rd day at work, when he discovered where the real stories of Thompson Digital lived, in the ground floor break room. Not the fancy cafe on the top floor where executives ate, but a small room tucked away near the mailroom, with its humming vending machines and slightly wobbly tables. During his lunch break, Jerome carried his brown paper bag to the break room, feeling strange about not eating at his usual expensive restaurant. The room was half full with a mix of receptionists, maintenance staff, and junior employees. As he entered, he heard sudden laughter from a corner table. "Join us, Jerome," called Sarah Chen, the programmer he'd met on Monday. She sat with a small group that included Earl the security guard, 2 maintenance workers named Mike and David, and a junior accountant called Priya. As Jerome settled into a chair, he noticed something interesting. Despite coming from different departments and backgrounds, these people seemed closer than any executive team he'd led. They shared food, swapped stories, and spoke freely about their lives at the company. "So, Jerome," Priya asked, opening her lunch container filled with homemade curry, "how are you finding the front desk?" Before he could answer, Sarah jumped in. "Did you know I used to work reception too?" She smiled, but her eyes held a hint of sadness. 3 years ago, I started right where you're sitting now." Marcus leaned forward, curious. He had always thought Sarah started as a junior programmer. Sarah continued her story. I have a master's degree in computer science from Georgia Tech. But when I applied for a programming position here, they said I wasn't quite what they were looking for. The only job they offered was reception. The others nodded knowingly as Sarah spoke. I took it because I needed the work. For 2 years, I handled the front desk while coding in my free time. I built 3 different programs that the company now uses, including the visitor management system you're using, Jerome. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He had no idea Sarah had created that system. The executives had told him it was developed by the tech team. But here's the real kicker, Sarah added, stirring her coffee. I've applied for the senior programmer position 3 times. Each time, they hired someone from outside with less experience. Last week, Mr. Cooper missed our meeting again. Mike, the maintenance worker, shook his head. It's not just you, Sarah. Remember when they hired that new facilities manager? I had been doing that job unofficially for a year, but they said I needed a degree. The guy they hired lasted 3 months before quitting. As lunch continued, Marcus heard story after story. Priya talked about being the only woman of color in accounting, but never being invited to client meetings. David shared how maintenance requests from certain managers got priority, creating a backlog of repairs for regular staff areas. Earl stayed quiet through most of the conversation, but when he spoke, everyone listened. You know what the sad part is? The big boss, Mr. Thompson, probably has no idea this is happening. These managers create a pretty picture for him while running things their own way down here. Marcus almost choked on his sandwich. Earl was right. He had no idea, and that was the problem. The break room group met every day, Marcus learned. They called themselves the ground floor crew, a support system for each other when things got tough. They shared job leads, gave advice, and celebrated each other's small victories. Before lunch ended, Sarah showed Jerome something on her laptop, a new program she had built in her free time. It was an improved version of the company's project management system, faster and more user-friendly than the expensive one they currently used. Why don't you show this to management? Jerome asked. Sarah laughed quietly. I tried, sent emails to it and development. They never responded. After a while, you learn to stop trying. As Jerome walked back to his desk, his mind was racing. He had always prided himself on running a company where talent mattered more than anything else. But now he saw how many talented people were stuck, overlooked, or pushed aside simply because they didn't fit someone's idea of what success looked like. In his pocket, his notebook was filling up with new notes. But these weren't just observations anymore. They were evidence of a system that needed to change. The break room had shown him the truth about his company, and it was a truth he couldn't ignore. Thursday started like any other day at the reception desk, but it would become the day that changed everything. Jerome arrived early, exchanged his usual friendly greeting with Earl, and settled in for what he thought would be a normal day at Thomson Digital. Around 10 a.m., a group of executives from Golden State Industries arrived for a meeting. Marcus recognized them immediately. They were one of their biggest potential clients, worth millions in contracts. As Jerome, he stood up to greet them professionally. I'm here to see Marcus Thompson, the lead executive, Mr. Richardson, announced without looking directly at Jerome. When Jerome politely asked him to sign in, Richardson scoffed. Listen, boy, Richardson said in a low voice, just call up and tell them we're here. No need to play security guard with me. The other executives chuckled, and one of them muttered something about hired help these days. Marcus felt his face grow hot, but Jerome had to stay calm and professional. As he made the call to announce their arrival, he noticed Earl watching the scene with a knowing look. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. But the real crisis came later that afternoon. James Cooper, the VP of Operations and Marcus's own protégé, was walking through the lobby when Tony, one of the maintenance workers Marcus knew from the break room, emerged from the executive bathroom looking embarrassed. What were you doing in there? Cooper demanded loudly, drawing attention from everyone in the lobby. I'm sorry, sir, Tony explained quietly. The other bathrooms were closed for cleaning, and it was an emergency. I have a medical condition. Cooper cut him off. That bathroom is for executives only. There are signs clearly posted. If you can't follow simple rules, maybe we need to review your position here. Jerome watched as Tony's face fell. The man had worked at Thomson Digital for 12 years. Marcus remembered approving his recent request for medical leave due to his diabetes treatment. Is everything okay here? Earl stepped forward, his presence calm but firm. This isn't your concern, Cooper snapped. Just keep an eye on your people and make sure they stay where they belong. As Cooper stormed off, Jerome saw something he'd never noticed before, the look that passed between Earl and Tony, a look of quiet resignation mixed with dignity. They had dealt with this kind of treatment before. The afternoon got worse when Sarah arrived at the reception desk, her eyes red. Jerome, she whispered, I just came from a development meeting. They're implementing a new project management system, paid $1 million for it. She took a shaky breath. It's almost exactly like the one I designed, the one they ignored. Except this one's from a big company, so suddenly it's worth paying for. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. He had approved that purchase last week, never knowing that a better solution existed within his own company. Later, as Jerome was processing mail, he overheard two middle managers discussing budget cuts. We'll start with the easy ones, one said. Reception, maintenance, security, they're all replaceable. We can outsource the whole thing, save a bundle, and the executives won't even notice the difference. Marcus thought about Earl, who knew every employee by name and made everyone feel safe. He thought about Tony, who came in early every winter morning to salt the sidewalks so no one would slip. He thought about Lisa, who remembered every client's coffee preference and made sure meetings ran smoothly. These weren't just positions to cut. These were the people who kept the company running. At the end of the day, as Jerome was packing up, Sarah stopped by his desk one last time. You know what's funny, she said, placing a stack of mail in his inbox. Mr. Thompson's big thing is innovation can come from anywhere. It's written on the wall of every floor. She smiled sadly. I guess anywhere doesn't include the ground floor. Marcus watched her walk away, her words hitting him like a physical blow. He had written that slogan himself 5 years ago, believing every word. Now he saw how empty those words were for so many of his employees. That night, as he removed his Jerome disguise in his home bathroom, Marcus stared hard at his reflection. He had built this company from nothing, proud of every step of its growth. But somewhere along the way, he had lost sight of what mattered most, the people who made that growth possible. Tomorrow would be his last day as Jerome. He had seen enough. It was time to make things right, no matter the cost. On his second to last day as Jerome, Marcus decided to dig deeper into the problems he had discovered. He arrived an hour earlier than usual, watching as the morning shift of cleaning staff finished their work. He noticed how they rushed to complete everything before the executives arrived, making themselves invisible when the early morning meeting started. During a quiet moment at the reception desk, Lisa showed Jerome how to handle the company's client database. As she explained the system, Marcus noticed something strange in the notes section for each client. What do these colored dots mean? Jerome asked, pointing to the screen. Lisa looked uncomfortable. Oh, those. They're client preferences. Red dots mean the client should be directed to specific account managers. Blue dots are for regular routing. But as Marcus looked closer, he saw a pattern. Clients from minority-owned businesses were consistently marked with red dots and assigned to junior account managers. Meanwhile, blue dot clients got direct access to senior teams. Who created this system? Jerome asked carefully. It started about 2 years ago, Lisa explained. The sales directors said it was for better client management. Most of us at the front desk figured out what it really meant. But what can we do? We're just receptionists. During his lunch break, Jerome visited different floors, using his temporary worker badge to access areas he never saw as CEO. In the IT department, he found talented programmers like Sarah stuck in junior positions, while new hires with less experience but prestigious degrees got fast-tracked to senior roles. He discovered a group of employees who met secretly in the building's old conference room during lunch. They called themselves the Underground, and they supported each other with career advice, job leads, and emotional support. Members included people from all departments who felt overlooked or discriminated against. Welcome to the Underground, said Maria, a marketing coordinator who had been passed over for promotion 3 times. We created this group because we needed a safe space to talk about what really happens here. Jerome sat quietly as they shared their stories. He learned about the unwritten rules that everyone knew but no one discussed. Don't schedule important client meetings for teams led by minority managers. Route major accounts to traditional-looking account executives. Keep maintenance and support staff out of sight during client visits. Promote based on cultural fit rather than actual performance. Back at the reception desk, Jerome started paying closer attention to the phone calls he handled. He noticed how different managers treated different employees who called for meetings. Some got immediate callbacks, while others were left waiting for days. Later that afternoon, a young black executive from another company arrived for a meeting. Jerome watched as 3 different employees asked her if she was in the right building, despite her professional attire and visitor badge. When she finally reached her meeting room, Jerome overheard 2 managers discussing her company. "Are we sure we want to work with them?" one asked. "Their CEO is very different from our usual partners. The board wants to show diversity in our partnerships," the other replied. "Just keep them in the small accounts for now." Marcus felt his hands shaking as he wrote these conversations in his notebook. As CEO, he had created policies against discrimination, set up diversity training, and thought that was enough. But now he saw how easily these policies were twisted or ignored. Near the end of the day, Earl stopped by the reception desk. "You've been asking a lot of questions, Jerome," he said quietly, "looking in places most temps don't look." Marcus felt a moment of panic, but Earl just smiled. "Don't worry, we've all seen how you really listen to people, how you care about what's happening here. Maybe you can't change things from where you are, but at least you're trying to understand." As Jerome left the building that evening, his notebook was full of evidence of systemic problems that went far deeper than he had imagined. Tomorrow would be his last day undercover, and he had one more area to investigate before revealing himself. In his car, Marcus looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror, still disguised as Jerome. He had built this company believing in fairness and equality. Now he saw how those values had become nothing more than words on a wall. But tomorrow would change everything. He had the evidence he needed. The real question was, will he have the courage to use it? Marcus arrived for his final day as Jerome with mixed feelings. Part of him was eager to return to his real identity and start making changes, but another part felt sad about leaving the friends he had made at the ground level of his company. The morning started with a scene that perfectly captured everything wrong with Thompson Digital. A young black intern named Michael walked through the lobby, dressed in an expensive suit and carrying a stack of financial reports. 3 different people stopped him, assuming he was a delivery person or maintenance worker. "The service elevator is in the back," one manager said without even looking up from his phone. "Actually, I'm heading to the finance meeting," Michael replied politely. "I'm the new intern from Harvard Business School." The manager's attitude changed instantly. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. Please, let me show you to the executive elevator." Jerome watched the scene unfold while processing the morning mail. Earl caught his eye from his security desk and shook his head slowly. They both knew what they had just witnessed. Around mid-morning, Sarah came to the reception desk looking defeated. "They just announced the team leads for the new project," she said quietly. "Guess who didn't make the cut? But they did ask me to train the new lead on our systems." Before Jerome could respond, James Cooper walked through the lobby with several other executives. They were discussing lunch plans at an expensive restaurant when Cooper stopped suddenly, looking at a maintenance worker who was cleaning the lobby windows. "Hey you," Cooper called out. "Make sure you finish all the windows before the board members arrive this afternoon, and try not to be visible when they're here." The maintenance worker was Tony, the same man Cooper had confronted about the bathroom. Tony nodded silently and continued working, his face carefully blank. During lunch break, Jerome joined the ground floor crew one last time. The break room was busier than usual because the cafeteria upstairs was closed for a private executive lunch. He listened as his friends shared their hopes and frustrations. "Did you hear they're planning to outsource the reception and maintenance staff?" Preya whispered. "My friend in accounting saw the budget proposals." "They can't do that," Mike protested. "Some of us have been here for years." "They can do whatever they want," Earl said quietly. "To them, we're just numbers on a spreadsheet." As Jerome looked around the break room, he saw dozens of talented, hard-working people who kept the company running smoothly. People who came in early, stayed late, and cared deeply about their work. People who were treated as invisible unless something went wrong. The afternoon brought the final straw. A group of board members arrived for their monthly meeting. Jerome recognized Mrs. Anderson, one of the longest-serving board members, but she didn't give him a second glance as he announced their arrival. As the board members waited for the elevator, Jerome overheard their conversation about the company's future plans. "The diversity numbers look bad," one member said. "We need to hire more minorities for the annual report." "Just put some in visible positions," another replied. "Reception, maintenance, security. Places where they'll be seen, but won't affect important decisions." Marcus felt his blood boil, but Jerome kept a pleasant smile on his face as he directed them to the conference room. At the end of the day, as Jerome was preparing to leave for the last time, Sarah stopped by his desk again. "You know what's funny, Jerome?" she said. "In just 1 week, you've shown more interest in our ideas and concerns than management has in years. Too bad you're just a temp. We could use more people like you around here." Earl joined them, carrying Jerome's security badge. "You're different, Jerome," he said. "You see people as people, not just their job titles. The world needs more of that." As Jerome walked out of the building for the last time, he looked back at the huge Thomson Digital logo on the wall. Tomorrow, he would return as Marcus Thompson, CEO. But he would never again see his company the same way. In his car, Marcus began removing his Jerome disguise for the last time. His notebook was full, his heart was heavy, and his mind was made up. Tomorrow wouldn't just bring changes. It would bring a revolution in how Thomson Digital treated its people. Every single person who worked in that building deserved better, and he was finally ready to make that happen. The question was, would his executives and board members be ready for what was coming? Monday morning arrived with a buzz of excitement at Thomson Digital. Everyone had received an urgent email about a mandatory all-hands meeting at 10 a.m. The company's largest conference room was packed with employees from every department and level. James Cooper stood at the front, checking his watch nervously. "Has anyone heard from Mr. Thompson? He's never late." Just then, Jerome walked into the room wearing his usual receptionist clothes. People looked confused to see a temp at an all-hands meeting. Earl, Sarah, and the rest of the ground floor crew smiled and waved him over. But Jerome didn't join them. Instead, he walked to the front of the room. Everyone watched in confusion as he took out a small makeup removal wipe and began cleaning his face. The room fell silent as Jerome's features changed. The gray streaks disappeared from his hair, and his posture straightened. Within minutes, Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thomson Digital, stood where Jerome had been. Gasps filled the room. Sarah dropped her notebook. Earl's usual calm expression changed to complete shock. James Cooper's face went pale. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus said, his voice no longer Jerome's hesitant tone but strong and clear. "For the past week, I've worked as a temporary receptionist named Jerome Williams. What I learned during that time will change this company forever." He opened his notebook and began sharing everything he had seen and heard. The discriminatory client routing system, the ignored talents of people like Sarah, the way maintenance and support staff were treated, the plans to outsource jobs, the fake diversity initiatives. "I built this company believing in equality and innovation," Marcus continued. "But somewhere along the way, we lost our soul. Today, that changes." He turned to James Cooper and the other executives. "Some of you will clean out your desks today. Those who supported or created discriminatory policies have no place in the Thomson Digital of tomorrow." Then he looked at Sarah. "Ms. Chen, your project management system is brilliant. Starting next week, you'll lead our software development team as Senior Director of Innovation. Your first project is implementing your system company-wide." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as her colleagues applauded. "Earl," Marcus continued, "you know this company and its people better than anyone. You're our new head of company culture and employee relations, reporting directly to me. Your first task is creating a true open-door policy that works for everyone." Earl stood straighter, his face showing pride and determination. Marcus announced more changes. Tony would lead the facilities management team. Priya would head a new financial inclusion initiative. The discriminatory client routing system would be destroyed immediately. But the biggest change, Marcus said, starts with how we see each other. Every person in this building, from maintenance to management, deserves respect. Success isn't about your title or your degree. It's about your talent, your work ethic, and your character. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of people he had worked beside as Jerome. I've learned more in 1 week as a receptionist than in 5 years as CEO. I learned that our greatest assets are the people we've been ignoring. That stops today. The room erupted in applause. People were crying, hugging, and cheering. The ground floor crew members looked at each other with amazement and hope. 6 months later, Thomson Digital was a different company. The new open office layout had removed physical barriers between departments. Sarah's project management system was saving the company millions. Earl's employee relations programs had created real connections between all levels of staff. Marcus kept his promises. He had lunch in the ground floor break room at least once a week, sitting with different teams each time. The company's success soared as hidden talents were finally recognized and rewarded. One morning, a young black woman arrived for her first day as a software engineer. As she walked through the lobby, no one questioned her presence or directed her to the service elevator. Instead, she was greeted warmly by everyone she met. Sarah, now leading the tech team, gave her a tour. They passed the company's new mission statement on the wall. The woman stopped to read it. At Thomson Digital, every voice matters, every talent counts, and innovation truly can come from anywhere. We know this because our CEO learned it at the front desk. Marcus watched from his office as the tour continued. As weak as Jerome had taught him that true leadership meant seeing the worth in every person. Thomson Digital wasn't just a more successful company now, it was finally the company he had always dreamed of building.